My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the new instructional designer here at EWU. My job here is to take a look at the programs, courses, and people from a different point of view, to see how all these Lego pieces fit, and to imagine how I can help put them together differently to make something new and amazing. Welcome to the Play to Learn podcast. Today, I had the opportunity to sit down with Mark Holmgren, an amazing instructor in the economics department who has been using innovative gamification strategies in his courses with great success. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hi, I'm Jim Ryan, and I'm here to speak with you today just kind of about how you have used different tools to engage your students in different activities that were, made things more stimulating in the classroom. But could you first start off just by telling me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I teach in the economics department at Eastern Washington University. So in 2010 was when I earned my PhD, and I started working here in the fall at Eastern. I received an email over the summer from, then it was called the Gulf Coast Economics Association. And what it is, it's a group of instructors across the country that are interested in pedagogy. So how can we teach economics better? And so I went to that conference, sponsored by Cengage. And they've been holding that conference for a number of years. So I would attend that conference every year, and each of the publishing companies, they all hold a teaching conference that just focuses on pedagogy in various formats. And so I would just maintain with this one, and I would just go to this one. And so a couple of years went by, and they've asked me to be on the board. So I'm on the board for the and they actually changed the name. It's now the National Economics Teaching Association. And as a board member, what we do is review different submissions for the conference and then say whether what looks good, what doesn't look good. And then we hold the conference in fall. And then with being on the board, they rotate us through. So I was the president for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
On this. So we go through and switch it out between the different instructors. The main focus of these instructors, just that we want to figure out ways to help students better understand economics and how to comprehend it better.
So what originally got you interested in economics just to begin with?
So I was sitting in the intro to economics class, which would be equivalent to Economics 100 here. And I was sitting in the class, and I was just like, wow, this is really cool. This is really amazing. I find this really interesting. And then I was looking around the classroom, and all the students just looked like they were bored out of their mind. And I thought, well, this is probably what I should do.
So do you think there's anything that made a difference between your interest and everybody else's not interest? Was there some kind of did you think that was innately in you, and maybe that was just something that hadn't hit them, or there was something that could maybe bring them over to your level of interest?
Well, I don't know. After I found this interest in economics, when I was sitting in my classes, I just kept thinking throughout my career, if I were to teach this, what would how would I do it? How would I get this information across to the students? So that's just what I was thinking while I was sitting in class. Well, I was like, well, if I were teaching the class, I probably would have done it this way or this way.
So as you were taking the class, you were thinking about that? Or as you were going through your process of...
Well, it's kind of interesting because I always knew I was going to do graduate school, and I always had an interest in math. And so when I went to the economics department to see whether I should pursue graduate work in math or econ, they said, well, you don't really have to make up your mind now, because once you get into graduate school in economics, it's really heavily math intensive. So why don't you just get the bachelor's degree in math and then get your minor in econ, and then that would put you farther ahead in graduate school. So that's what I did. Is I did an undergrad in math and then a minor in econ. And then it was at that point that I realized math was just not for me. So I like more of the applied math. So we do a lot of mathematics in economics, especially in the upper level courses.
So what did you do, I guess, for your research topic for your PhD?
Well, so my dad was an accountant at a ski resort, and then had this data available for me, and so my dissertation was on snow skiing, estimating the demand for snow skiing, and then whether season ticket holders get enough money, or if they go enough times to get their money's worth. And then I also worked with the institutional research down at Washington State University. And the third essay in my dissertation was about predicting student success. What were the aspects of what's going to make a student successful in college?
Well, I want to know all about those results right there.
So what we find is that with working with my dissertation advisor, the best predictor of student success is not high school GPA, it's not SAT score, but it was whether they use the gym or not. The student rec center.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's that connection with other students. As long as you can build that connection with other students and feel like, hey, you really belong here, then that's what's going to help students.
So it would be your experience since then that other activities that involved community building with the students greatly enhanced their chances of graduating?
Yeah, of being successful.
Wow, that is really good info. For some examples, I heard some from the student I talked to, Maggie, but could you talk a little bit about like what type of activities that you have in your classes?
Before I get into it, I just want to say is that, for every instructor, it's going to be different. Like the ways that I teach the class aren't going to work for my peers.
Mm-hmm.
And for everyone, it's going to be different. So there's this website called criticalcommons.org.
I know about it. Got it. Yep.
So it was originally supposed to be for people who are majoring in theater, but then the economists just jumped right on it. And so you'll see tons and tons of videos from submissions from economic instructors, and there's a wide variety. So some of the instructors, when they post on Critical Commons, they'll do like songs and lyrics and things like that. And I've tried it in my class, and I just can't get it to work. So
there's a specific audience for that, I think.
Well, not only an audience, but if you can present it the right way. So I've got a friend of mine out at Susquehanna University, and he does a lot of these he's really into musicals and things like that. And he's always posting things on there for musicals, and I just can't. It's got to be your own personal preferences on how you present the material. So there's not one size that fits all,
right?
Kind of a thing. So, and then there's another guy out at Robert Morris who he puts on music videos, but what he does is he will put basically a PowerPoint slideshow while the song is going on, and it has the lyrics on one side, and then on the other side, it has all the applications to economics.
That's smart. That's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah. It just depends on the person. So given that information, what really works for me is I have students play games in the class. Now, I don't know how that would work in other disciplines, but what I'll do is I'll put in a game. We'll play a game in the class. And then after the game, then I will compile the results, get the data, and then show the results to the students. And then we can talk about, okay, how does this relate to the theory? How do people really act, right? How should they act? How do they act? And then the students thinking in their mind, okay, this is how I acted. Should I have done it? And change it. I teach an econometrics class. It's just a fancy way of saying statistics for economists.
Mm-hmm.
And what we'll do is we'll play the games in the class. I'll collect all the data and everything, and then that's what's on their assignment for that week.
That's smart. That's really smart. Just incorporating live data basically into their homework.
Right. So then they know, like, they've got a better understanding of how that data was created, what it is. And then instead of me just pulling some data from some random place, something that might be my interest, right? But they don't really know much about the topic and things like that. So then, they're estimating the data, then they're kind of like, but I think this gives them a better sense of, okay, this is what's really going on. So
it's contextualizing the information, showing the real world application, and then they get to use that to solve the problems that they're given at the end of the day. That is exactly what I'm looking for.
no,
You're like the best person ever to be the first one I'm talking to about this. So thank you very much for that.
yeah.
So what kind of ideas, so you've used that so far. Have you thought of anything moving forward, that some other things you might like to try?
Yeah, so, we're kind of short on staff here at the university, and so I'm not teaching the class. Well, I mean, I am teaching the classes that I want to, but there are some classes that I would like to teach, but we just don't have enough staff to teach those classes. So I've kind of implemented those in my classes, but I'm basically teaching Intro to Micro every quarter. I'm teaching Econ 200, Intro to Micro, 2 times every quarter. And so the last thing I want to do is try to get it going monotonous. And it was there for, I was starting to fill it, but over this winter break, what I've done is I've been asking these questions to my students the previous week that relates to what we'll be talking about in the topic the following week. And then once again, what I'll do is then I'll compile that data, and then I'll put in the results. And so then they can see what they would do. So, I've got some examples here. Well, I had half of the students get a piece of paper, and you always have a control group and a different group.
Sure.
But I don't tell them, and then I just hand them out, and then they answer it, and then they pass it back. And I'm like, hey, this can be just completely anonymous. Don't put your name on the paper or anything. So this one is you're at a beach, and your buddy wants to go get you a drink because you're hot and thirsty. How much would you be willing to pay if the drink was at the hotel?
Okay.
And then the second group says, well, what if it's just this rundown bodega, how much would you be willing to pay for the drink? And so then what I do is I count them all up, and then I can graph it. And so we can see that here is the line for the store is the blue one, and then the orange is for the hotel. And so one misperception in economics is this difference between demand and quantity demand. People will say the demand's higher when it's not. It's really the quantity demand. So then I'm like, okay, is there more people wanting to buy, the quantity demand is going to be the same in both cases. You get that out of the picture, right? And so then you're just specifically looking at the demand. And so then what it's telling me is that since this orange line is higher than the blue line, the demand for the soda is higher at the hotel than it is or at this rundown bodega.
Sure. Yeah. It makes sense. Perfect sense. Yeah.
Even though your quantity isn't going to be
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
That is really creative. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the whole thing that I'm trying to get people to think of differently is contextualizing their lessons, because there can be a lot of unrelated stories, like problems, like there's a whole story in one problem, and then you go into the next problem and it's a whole other story, and nothing's really connected, and there's no real sense of cohesion or how everything fits all together. So seeing you do things like this and have content from one week be either revisited or contingent on what happens the next week, I'm assuming that makes a huge difference in how the students can see how these things affect things downstream, if I'm reading that right.
Well, I'm not quite there like what I would like to be at, but it's something I've been thinking about for years, is, building that bridge.
Well, a lot of it comes through storytelling, and it's there's lots of little stories that are here, but if you can think of some story that could span the length of a course,
Right.
that's actually related to something that kind of everybody is familiar with, like a movie or a television show.
Right.
I don't know if do you have any kind of like movies or television shows that you like that are related to, business and accounting, like, what was that, Billionaires or something like that? Or
Well, so back in the day, like years ago with this critical commons, so one of the other ladies on this board, she just loves Seinfeld.
yeah, that's great.
And so she had a website. It was called yada 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 econ.com.
Sure, yeah.
And what that she did was she was able to, she would cut and paste just a particular topic in economics. And so I would show that at the beginning of every class, like, how does this relate to the topic, whether we're talking about complements or substitutes. And other people have done that too for other television shows and other movies. And so there's kind of a trade-off about that, because if there was a clip that I really enjoyed, it was a little too long, if it's about 7 or 8 minutes and it's just too long.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it's like a clip, and then people were realizing this too. So they're putting clips on there that are like only 30 seconds, a minute. And then it's like, well, I got to wait for the screen to come down, turn the projector on. And then I'm like, is it even really worth showing a clip this short when it's just...
Well, is your course all 100% in person, or do you have a Canvas component to your course?
I have a Canvas component to it.
So if that's the case, you can offload a lot of that, video watching time to the Canvas side of things.
Right.
For when students are going to be coming the next day, you can premise it with the cutscene.
Right. Yeah.
And then say, okay, so we're at this part of the story. You're going to be playing, Kramer or something. You're going to bust into the room and
Right.
you're going to see this situation. This is how, we're going to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. And, one reason why I was opposed to it in the past was just because now it's another thing I have to grade.
Right. Yeah.
So what I do is before the students come to class, the publisher that I'm using, what they'll do is they'll have a multiple choice question. And then if they get it wrong, they have a 1-2 minute video that explains how you do the problem. And then the student can go back and complete the problem. So I just give them full credit. If they complete it, they could answer it incorrectly as many times as they want, as long as at the end they get it correct, then they get full credit for it. And so then if I did like when you post something and everyone comments on the post.
Yeah, discussion board, yeah.
Yeah, discussion board. Then I've got to go through and read all of those. And so,
Sure.
And then
that can get tedious. I'm very familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it would be a good idea if I put the clip up there. And if they want to watch it, that's great. And if they don't, that's fine. And then they can read, just a little bit that I'll have written up on it.
So like those questions you were mentioning, would it be helpful to have almost like a mini game that has like a cache of variations of that same problem that the students could go through and play? And then once they're fairly consistent with it and they're feeling more, like they have better mastery of it, then that would help them in class?
I don't know, because sometimes it's better that they don't know.
Okay.
And sometimes it would be better if they do know. That's something I've been thinking about, going back and forth about, is how much do I really tell them beforehand, or do they understand a lot better if they can, go through the slog and figure things out for themselves.
Because that is definitely a skill, being able to on the spot do that problem solving. I think that teaches them quite a lot. So you have that one part that, preparing them, and then another part that's like kind of out of left field that they're not ready prepared for, but you get to see how they're like, oh gosh, how do I do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, there's a good handful of students who will just like, oh, that's the problem is I'll just I can tell there's a handful of students just absolutely have no clue what's going on. And I try to keep the instructions as short as concise, but some of them, it's better that I go through. But if I spend too long, then they're just like, then I lose them. And
So there's definitely a population there. Is that group of students, whatever size, is fairly like uniform size, or does it get bigger or smaller with different cohorts? Or
No, I would say it's generally about the same size. Like in a 60 student class, I would say maybe 10.
10. Okay.
About a 6.
So I guess then the challenge would be how to get that group more interested.
Yeah, that's usually, yeah. So, I mean, you're not going to reach out to everyone.
Not everybody's, made to go through a certain program,
Right.
Yeah, I definitely reached that at one point in my college career. So I was like, I better shift over to this side over here. So if you had the opportunity to teach some other classes that you were talking about there, what ones would those be?
So right now, I mean, with our department, I'm teaching overload every quarter.
Sure.
But I mean, with the statistics, I mean, I could reach out and teach, stats in various disciplines. There's a lot of going to this teaching conference. I talked to some of my colleagues, and there's a friend of mine out at Converse College in South Carolina, and she'll team teach with the theater people. And so what they'll do is they'll watch Casablanca, and she pulls out all the economics from Casablanca, and then the theater people will pull out all the different theater parts, the acting part, and different techniques.
That and lighting and all that, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something that lacks at the university is this integration of, trying to get cross disciplines. They tried something like that a number of years ago. They were trying to do a first year experience. It's really difficult. So what they did was they had a cohort and they had this book, and then they would read the book, and then they would talk about the book in 3 different classes throughout the year.
Oh, that is interesting.
But it was just problem was half the students didn't like the book. And another part is it's like, you can only beat it so many times. And I'm sure by the time they were taking that 3rd class, they were just tired, regardless of whatever direction I wouldn't want to spend a quarter just me personally talking about a particular book. But then what they did was they just had different courses. There was a first year experience course. And so what I would do is we just played games the whole entire quarter, and then how does it apply, and talk about the theory and things like that. And I never got feedback or anything. So I don't know how, how well it went or went over and things like that. But
that would be a good thing to be able to analyze, for a statistics class, is have the students do a survey afterwards and have another group of students look over that data and kind of report back.
Right.
So going back to that drama econ one, so both the drama students and the econ students were there at the same time, and they were kind of learning the other material. Is that my reading?
Oh, I think it might have just been, I can't remember if she said it was like a gen ed class or the one that did the Seinfeld economics. So she would teach, that was just a gen ed class. And that was how she began making those clips, because it was like a Seinfeld economics gen ed class for non-business majors. And so,
the class about nothing.
Yeah, right. The class about nothing.
Yeah.
And so then she just kind of ran off with she would just use that class to talk about Seinfeld. And she was just trying to make the point is that you see economics everywhere. Everywhere is economics. And that, in your TV shows or your movies you're watching, it's all about economics. And I don't know, because I was really heavily involved when they're trying to do this first year experience. Like I was like trying to go to the meetings and things like that. And there's a lot of pushback from faculty and things like that. And it really is challenging how you work it out, because you want to build that bridge. And like you were saying, you want to tell a story throughout the quarter. But I mean, I know another professor out at, when she does the supply and demand, she uses the same market every time she explains the supply and demand. So throughout the quarter, you're always talking about this particular market.
Sure.
And I tried that, and it just didn't work for me. And I think the students are bored by it. They're like, oh, they've got to hear about this market again and things like that. So, I try to switch it up. So, I mean, what works for some people doesn't work for others.
Yeah, it's not a blanket thing. I mean, it's all going to be trial and error, but it's really cool to see somebody experimenting with like new, ideas like that. I mean, I think that's all I have. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time, because this has just been really eye-opening, and it's good to see somebody like you here just doing some really awesome stuff.
Thanks.